Yes, we're back with you after what seemed a weekend of high drama, but that's what life is made of, a little challenge here and there. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka.
You can say that again. What a weekend it was. Welcome to the show. We're live for you here in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Well, Jeffrey is here with us. You can't see him. He's here with us in the spirit, as they say.
Right?
Just taking some moment off. You may have seen him on Sunday Politics. So not to worry. Jeffrey is not here, really, but
he'll be back with us very soon.
Absolutely.
With his old sage wisdom. We miss you, Jeffrey. So, Kayode, did your team win over the weekend?
Oh, yes. My team is always winning. Yeah, the Morning Brief team, the Channels TV team.
Right?
Yeah, I know what you want to say. You think I'm involved in football. Well, every once in a while, I just, catch a glimpse.
I know that you'd have supported the Three Lions, but...
So I since moved from football to golf. And I think you got that memo.
Place,
That's
right?
a safe place, because it doesn't have all of the emotional roller coaster.
That implication on your mental health.
Exactly, it's just golf, really. Even though I'm not even a learner. If there's anything lower than a learner, that's what I am. But it's safer for me. So Euros, finals, yes, I was catching the updates, as they say, and it was good because I was invested in it. Whatever was going to play out, it didn't concern me. Exactly. But yes, I know a lot of people were supporting the Three Lions, England against Spain, but Spain took today. Some people said they saw that coming anyway, and they went back to that old saying: football is not coming home, as England would always say, because any competition England gets into, they start singing, football is coming home, because football was invented in England, so they always say that the football is coming home.
Right?
But this football was almost home, and then someone kicked it to Spain. Yeah.
And there had been that prediction just some hours ahead of the match that Spain was going to win, and Spain took it. But maybe someday football will come home to the Three Lions.
So what should Nigeria say? Because we didn't even invent the net or anything. But there you go. If your team lost, not to worry. If you had any major setback over the weekend, not to worry. This is a new week. It's the start of new possibilities. So let's start together, shall we? We have quite a package for you on the show, really. There was even tennis over the weekend. Djokovic lost yet again, and even what happened in the US. So quite a number of things to put together for our people today. So Bukola, what do you have first?
What happened in the US was, a big event over the weekend. And, America is certainly not new to assassination attempts on its president its president, but this is a candidate, not a president, a former president. So there's been a lot of talk about the implications of this for the November presidential election in the United States, and of course for the world's largest democracy. Is going to be one of the big talking points on the program today, so we'll just keep our gunpowder dry and leave all of the implications and possibilities for that time where we would bring it to you. But beyond that, there are also other issues that will be unfolding on the program today. We're going to start with that very thorny challenge of building collapses in the country and what we can do to prevent it. With about 616 building collapses recorded since about 1974, with Lagos sharing the highest burden of 348. The consequence in death and loss of huge financial resources often come also at a great cost. So what are the enduring lessons to learn from the recurring collapses that are mostly attributed to the activities of quacks, and according to experts, are doing an even bigger damage to the reputation of the Nigerian building professionals? Absolutely.
What happened last week left a very bitter taste in the mouth, and the days of mourning still continue in Plateau. But that's not all we're looking at this morning. Yes, last week saw a victory for the local governments, particularly because the Supreme Court gave that ruling, granting them autonomy in the real sense of it. But there's so much more that subnationals can do. States, for example, can generate electricity. So in Lagos State, will it be receiving a boost? Well, this becomes pertinent to ask as the Lagos State House of Assembly last week conducted a public hearing on a new state electricity bill 2024, which seeks to facilitate delivery of affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern public electricity access to the people. So the big question for a lot of Nigerians, particularly Lagosians, is this going to be the game changer? And we're looking at other states and asking what is being done to generate electricity at the state level now that the power has been given. Not yesterday, by the way, for months now. So today, we'll explore the prospects and challenges in that bill.
And don't forget also the big event in the United States of America, in Pennsylvania, to be precise, where former president and candidate of the Republican Party was shot at. Of course, the shooter has been identified and neutralized, but investigations are still ongoing as to what exactly was the motive of the shooter. So we're going to be examining that and looking at the implications for the November elections, as we stated earlier. So we urge you to stay tuned, and we'll have that big conversation later on the show. Don't forget also that you can be part of the program. Of course, as Kadi always says, you, this time around, are the third panelist on the show, well, in the absence of Jeffrey. So what are your thoughts, your reactions to the big talking points on the program? Also, you can send us your video, your comments, what exactly is happening in your locality. Send us those videos so that we can help amplify your voices. And the show will continue unfolding after this break with the top stories on the morning brief. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. And starting in Abuja, Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, says the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPC, now owns a 7.2% stake in the Dangote Petroleum Refinery and not a 20% stake as initially announced before the inauguration of the facility at the Lekki Free Trade Zone. Dangote, who made this known at a press briefing on Sunday, said NNPCL's stake dropped to 7.2% over the company's failure to pay the balance of their share, which was due in June. The NNPCL had acquired a 20% interest in the $20 billion Dangote refinery for $2.76 billion. The businessman was quoted as saying NNPCL no longer owns a 20% stake in the refinery. They were meant to pay their balance in June, but have yet to fulfill the obligations. Now they only own a 7.2% stake in the refinery. The NNPC confirmed the development in a statement late on Sunday, saying NNPC Limited periodically assesses its investment portfolio to ensure alignment with the company's strategic goals. The spokesman of the company is quoted to have said. A court of appeal in the United Kingdom has dismissed the appeal of Process and Industrial Development (PNID) on a previous judgment halting the enforcement of its $11 billion award against Nigeria. In a unanimous decision, the lead judge, Lord Justice Snowden, permitted PNID to appeal the judgment but dismissed the appeal. In a copy of the judgment published on the UK judiciary website, one of the issues raised in the PNID appeal bordered on whether the lower court was wrong to order the $43 million legal cost to be paid in British pounds sterling and not in Nigeria. Snowden, the lead judge, accepted the arguments of Nigeria that since the legal cost was paid in sterling, the cost order should be paid in the same currency. And to politics now, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has clinched all the 21 local government council seats in the just concluded local government council elections in the state. Announcing the result on Sunday evening at the commission's headquarters in Yola, Chairman of the State Electoral Commission, Mohammed Umar, says the ruling party won overwhelmingly in the 21 local government councils of the state.
For the chairmanship election,
Executive summary is that the chairmanship candidate of the People's Democratic Party contested and won in 24 local government councils of the state.
For the chairmanship election, the People's Democratic Party has won all the 21 seats as declared at the local government council yesterday. As for the councillorship, the 226 councillorship, PDP won 225 councillorship seats. NNPP won 1 in Demsa Local Government Council. So far that's the result we have. For the chairmanship election, the People's Democratic Party has won all the 21 seats as declared at the local government council yesterday. As for the councillorship, the 226 councillorship, PDP won 225 councillorship seats. NNPP won 1 in Demsa Local Government Council. So far that's the result we have.
And candidates of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, have also won all the 25 local government council elections conducted on Saturday, July the 13th in Delta State. The chairman of the commission, Dr. Jerry Agbaike, who announced the final results at the premises of the Delta State Independent Electoral Commission, said one of the candidates of the PDP was returned unopposed. PDP candidates contested against other parties and emerged winners in the 24 local government areas where the elections were conducted. However, there were no elections in Udu local government area as the chairmanship candidate of the PDP, Mr. Vincent Oyibode, returned unopposed. The PDP councillorship candidates also contested and won 499 electoral wards in the state, while the Allied People's Movement APM picked Electoral Ward 1 in Oshimili North local government area.
Executive summary is that the chairmanship candidate of the People's Democratic Party contested and won in 24 local government councils of the state. However, the chairmanship candidate of the PDP in Udu local government area was returned unopposed. The PDP candidates contested and won 499 electoral wards, while the Allied People's Movement won 1 electoral ward in Oshimili North local government area.
More politics now. The All Progressives Congress, APC, has called for unity and development in the southeast as the party vows to collapse the region into one united political party. The call was made during the APC Southeast Stakeholders meeting in Abakaliki, the Ebonyi State capital. The People's Democratic Party, PDP, has dissociated itself from an appeal filed at the Court of Appeal in Port Harcourt in connection with suit number PHC 2177 CS/2024. The suit is purportedly challenging an order of the Rivers State government to restrain the Chief Judge and the Clerk of the Rivers State House of Assembly from receiving or acting on any resolutions from certain individuals pending the determination of a case before it. In the statement issued by the National Publicity Secretary of the PDP, Mr. Debo Olugbagba, the disclaimer in a statement, who issued the disclaimer in a statement in Abuja, the PDP notes that the party did not file the said appeal, neither did it authorize any external solicitor to file same on its behalf. Now, the senator representing Edo North Senatorial District, Mr. Adams Oshomole, says he tried to stop Governor Godwin Obaseki in the 2020 governorship election, even though he did well enough to deserve a second term in office. Mr. Oshomole maintained that the people misinterpreted his intentions during the 2020 governorship campaigns, as many assumed he wanted to seize the reins of governance in the state. The former Edo State governor made the remarks while addressing the All Progressives Congress faithful in Benin City, the Edo State capital.
The opportunity now to employ either a good man or a bad man. Because that power now had the day. Because when they reach, they go blow grammar and grammar and grammar. When I dey here, when we dey do airport road, I do grammar. When I dey here, I do that road to Upper Siloko, to Channel 55. We push street light, we put gutter, we do grammar. Last time I said, make una know the employer of Obaseki, make una know vote for her. People say, Oshomole want to control. When do I want control? I don't do my own don't finish. But I know people, they do good for my body. And therefore, I know for support person when we don't test them. You carry your pikin go class 1, you fail. You won't go class 2, I say don't support. But people preach, say, Oshobole this, Oshobole that, they go, they employ the man. Una don't take una korokoro, I see what they happen. This road, I designed them before I left government. Obaseki don't greet one. He go down to be part of his work. So Obaseki is the left, he go down is the right, all at the same hand. Children know.
Away from politics now, the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has ordered former Minister of Information and Culture, Mr. Lai Mohammed, and the Ministry of Information to disclose the details of the agreement between the federal government and X, formerly Twitter, to assess whether the agreement complies with the exercise of Nigerians' human rights online. The judgment was delivered in May 2024 by Honorable Justice Nnamdi Dingba, following a Freedom of Information suit brought by the Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP. SERAP obtained the certified true copy of the judgment last Friday. And in his judgment, Justice Dingba held that the former minister and the Ministry of Information are directed and compelled to provide a copy of the agreement between the Nigerian government and X, formerly Twitter, to SERAP solely to ascertain its impact on the protection of fundamental human rights of Nigerians. Justice Dingba stated that disclosing the details of the agreement between the Nigerian government and X is in the public interest and does not affect X's business interest as a third party. It is also not prejudicial to Nigerian sovereignty and national security. Justice Dingba also stated that the agreement between the Nigerian government and X must still be disclosed irrespective of the harm to X if it will be in the public interest to make sure disclosure. And to business now, Nigeria is endowed with vast natural gas reserves, and leveraging these resources to power vehicles and the energy sector will greatly benefit the nation and its people. The managing director of the Presidential Compressed National Natural Gas Initiative, Mr. Michael Uluwagbemi, asserted this in an exclusive interview with Channels Television's Newsnight. He believes that utilizing the country's gas resources will ensure energy security, thereby enabling Nigerian businesses to thrive. And outside our shores, the FBI is working to access the phone of the man accused in the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, but he did not seem to have any ideologies. The gunman, Thomas Crooks, 20-year-old, was shot and killed by the Secret Service at the rally, but the motive remains a mystery. Meanwhile, global leaders have been condemning the attempted assassination on former U.S. President Donald Trump on Saturday. The Republican presidential candidate was at a rally in Pennsylvania when shots were fired and he was injured in his right ear. And sports news now. The Spanish national team on Sunday night defeated the Three Lions of England 2-1 to lift the Euro 2024 trophy. For the fourth game in a row, England came from behind, but this time they fell short with Mikel Oyarzabal scoring a late winner to snatch a 2-1 victory. Nico Williams' strike early in the second half put Spain ahead, but Cole Palmer's brilliant leveler looked set to send the game into extra time before Oyarzabal pounced 4 minutes from time. This was the second European Championship final in a row that Gareth Southgate's side have lost after falling to Italy on penalties in 2021, with 1996 being their only major tournament final before that time. What a weekend with so many things happening across the globe and, of course, at home as well, with the council elections. And there are also security concerns. But what are your thoughts to some of these big stories? Kade joins me again for a review. Hello again, Kade.
Bukola, let's walk through it, shall we? But one of the stories that Nigerians have been talking about is the revelation from Dangote, saying in the States, which a lot of people have been banking on, I should say, every time they say, well, Nigeria owns 20% of Dangote refinery through NNPCL, so not to worry, we're part of the business. But he says, no, it's not 20% as a lot of people think or assumed. It is 7.2%. So a lot of people went back in time and said, wait a minute, we remember the NNPCL saying, we're getting funds to get these stakes. And I think it was as early as 2021 when there was a lot of conversation around this, that NNPCL said that, you know what, we're getting 20% for $2.7 billion. So a lot of people dug back and said, so what then happened? But if you read further, you realize that it was said that 1 billion of that 2.7 billion naira funding was being paid from the Lekki Refinery Funding Limited. 1 billion was paid to Dangote Refinery. $36 million accounted for transaction costs. So they sort of split it. And essentially what that meant is that in that statement, NNPC said that the balance of 1.76 will be paid upon completion of the refinery. So it's a mixture, money and then the supply of crude. So it appears as though now Dangote is buying from US. There are reports that he may be buying from Brazil. Whether or not that is true is another thing entirely. So obviously, Nigeria is not keeping the end of its bargain to supply crude. So it's a no-brainer. But here's the point, Bukola. People are saying, why did it take Dangote to come out to tell Nigerians that we don't have 20%? Why didn't NNPCL come out to say this? It's a public company. Whether or not it's been mutated into what, public limited liability or what have you, it's still a company owned by Nigerians.
Well, with 7.2% now, I wonder how much leverage that Nigeria has on the company, and how much, to what extent Nigerians can demand, price accountability from the company, and how much Nigerians can demand, the provision and to ensure provision of supply of petroleum products throughout the country from the company.
Absolutely.
Because 7.2% stake is, very minimal.
Even with 20%, it's debatable how much influence you'll have. But the point is, NNPCL, the Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated, Ministry of Finance Incorporated, need to come clean on these things. Yes, NNPCL gave a response, but why did it come after that revelation was made? So, and
is it too late to redeem, that stake, really?
Well,
because
good question you ask, Bukola, but whether or not that is a priority for NNPCL or
the promise of energy security is quite important. Nigeria has had more than 3 decades of a very big challenge of petroleum, the supply of petroleum products throughout the country.
It's a no-brainer. But let's get into what you're saying this morning. The first one, the tragedy played out over the weekend in Plateau State, shocked a lot of people, especially because this concerned children and their teachers. While they were writing examinations, we understand. So that building collapsed and at least 22 people have died as a result of that school building collapse in Plateau State. So what are you saying about this? First user, P-Peace, with some figures, says it breaks my heart hearing stories of this magnitude. Truly trying and unfortunate, the user says, and offers his condolences.
Indeed, and those images were very heartbreaking. Right. You could see, a mother lying on the floor. I wonder what the news was from that incident for her. You could see children, some of them being rescued, and sadly, some of them were unable to be rescued. What happened, to that building? Were there any indications that the structure was weak? And if there were, why wasn't there, something done to salvage the situation? Very important questions to ask this morning. But this next reaction is from Josh Peterson, who says, just look at the building and you can tell that the building must have shaken for a long time before it finally collapsed.
The next one is from official_Kulex, says, my heartfelt condolences go out to the victims and imagine the families. Such a tragedy is deeply saddening, and I hope that the affected families find strength and support during this difficult time. May the memories of those lost be a source of inspiration for change in safety measures and infrastructure.
Amen to that. And this next one is from West Zeus, who says the engineer and the landlord should be arrested. The community should be sensitized on quality assurance, and that is essential. How many other buildings like that in Plateau, particularly in the neighboring areas to that location, are structurally weak, and who is paying attention? Absolutely.
So that is something we'll take on this morning. You may think it doesn't concern you that this happened in Plateau State, but just maybe they thought it didn't concern them as well, particularly those who were meant to be responsible. And that's what this next user says, don't forsake me. It says, look at the structure. It was surely a disaster waiting to happen. So did people see this and didn't say anything? Who's meant to even say something? You talked about the landlord, the engineer. That's what a previous user said. So we'll get into these issues this morning.
Indeed. So what about the state quality assurance for, the integrity of buildings in Plateau State? Do they have such a ministry? And if they do, are they being proactive about their job, or have they been caught napping? This next one is from Chima Echefule, who says, may the souls of those who lost their lives rest in peace, and may God give their relatives the strength to bear this loss.
Well, Prince Charles, that's Black Soldier, also re-echoes that statement, essentially offering condolences to the families. Some would say we should maybe never have gotten to this point anyway if the proactive measures were taken. As we said, this is a big topic for us on the show this morning. We'll take a look at what happened in Plateau and how to stem this. These are children. They didn't deserve that.
Away from that now to this next talking point, which is equally concerning as it affects, businesses, it affects investment, it affects, residents, on that corridor.
And mobility as well.
Indeed. And, it's about the Lagos State government's ban on Danfo, that's the yellow buses, plying that route, and Korokwe, or the smaller buses that also walk on 4 feet. You know them when you see them. So what are some of your thoughts to this ban? The ban, by the way, is along the Lekki-Ekpe corridor. That's where it affects. So this first reaction is from Mr. Ebony, who says, well, it won't be out of place, provided they have a better alternative in place of the Korokwe and Danfo buses plying the route. In the absence of a better alternative, they should better stay action.
Well, Cephas Cole re-echoes that, and Prophet's Solution says, good development. So it looks like people are saying this is good, but there's a condition. Alternative should be in place for about 6 months for people to get familiar and acclimatized to it. So I imagine you're saying 6 months before the ban. Also, I hope there's another means of livelihood for the drivers. This user says if these two factors are negative, then it is well. That's if they're not done, then that's going to be a challenge.
Indeed, something to note, especially because that's an industrial zone, and there are a number of people who ply that route as workers. Some who also have businesses as well. So it's going to affect their mobility to a very large extent. So what alternative?
Corridor, I believe.
Yeah.
The Dangote refinery is also on that corridor.
On that corridor as well. And I believe the free trade zone is also on that corridor. So let's move on, with the talking point this time around to a subject matter on security. The police arrest 2 suspected kidnappers, exhume victims' corpse in Ogun State. Some progress recorded there. Recall last week we had cause to also talk about the neutralizing of about 9 kidnappers in Lagos State. So this is cheery. And the first reaction is from Jersey's Footwear, who says, sometimes community members should see something and say something. But knowing how police sometimes work, you understand their fears. There's a huge level of distrust between police and public. But again, in the video are 2 gangs of kidnappers. The police use the station 2 as their den, charge ransom often.
There you go.
That's a big one there.
It's a big one. So we need to keep our eyes peeled as people and as security agencies. We don't want to be caught napping. It looks like this is on the rise, particularly in areas you never heard about kidnapping, or at least they've been far in between. But those are the trending issues this morning.
Yeah, and we're going to start off with the very, very unsettling matter of building collapses. What are the implications and what are the lessons to learn to prevent a reoccurrence? Join us for that conversation right after this timeout.
starting off with that very sad event we're still seeing play out in Plateau State because issues like this really linger. They never go away. The state has ordered 3 days of mourning. You can only imagine what the families are going through as a result of that building collapse. A school building collapsed, killing at least 22 people. There's a tendency to think, oh, that happened in Plateau State. I'm here in, Kano, or I'm here in Port Harcourt, or in Ibadan, or Lagos. I'm safe, but you shouldn't think that way. So this morning, we're turning attention to that, what to look out for. What are those issues, particularly during this season where the rains come down? They weaken the structure. How should people be proactive, and who should be taking responsibility? We're joined on the program this morning by the past president, Nigerian Institute of Structural Engineers, past president, Building Collapse Prevention Guild, Engineer Eddie Atumoyogo. He's right here with us in our Lagos studio. Good morning, engineer. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewers. Yeah.
It's good to have you, but that event we saw, terrible. And I imagine if we had that power of turning back the hand of time, we'll all just do it, just to ensure that those children and teachers are safe. So let me start with a comment that we got this morning, and I think it's important to start from that end. And this is what the user says on X, says the engineer and the landlord should be arrested. This is at the point of grief where people want some sort of, consequence, some sort of punishment. So who should be taking responsibility? Let's start there. Then we'll sort of walk back to those areas. So who are those who are meant to be responsible for issues like this?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, our hearts and our prayers are with the families that lost their loved ones, the young children. Before Plateau State, there was a Lagos State where 42 children died in their school. So this thing has been happening for some time. And there are people that are responsible in any building procurement process. The most important person is the client, the owner of the building, because he hires every other professional that will work on the building. The building industry has become an all-commerce affair, and it shouldn't be so. Because building designs and all that, there's a lot of mathematics, there's a lot of physics, and these are subjects that people used to run away from when they were in secondary school. So those that have been trained to handle these issues should be allowed to take responsibility. But it's an all-commerce affair. Like I said, the landlord, the owners of the property, the most important person because he hires everybody. Then the professionals that design the building, they're also liable. Those that constructed, they're also liable. And then those who are supposed to regulate, to inspect and make sure that people do what is supposed to be done, they're also liable. So there are a whole lot of people. When the building collapses, a lot of people, are involved, and each will have their own responsibility.
So regulators in terms of government?
Yes.
That's the state's ministry, or at least
there's a planning authority that will just vet the plans and approve. Then there's a building control. They're supposed to be visiting the site and making sure that people do the right thing. So there's a lot of, Well, the problem in Nigeria is that each time there's a collapse, they bring up more regulations. So they keep empowering the same people that have the wrong attitude. There's no way you can empower a lizard to become a crocodile. It's impossible. So it needs, a mind shift, a change of attitude, and a new way of doing things.
So owner of the building, the landlord, the professionals, and I imagine the engineers, the architects who probably designed that, or the structural or the civil engineer. You can help us. The structural engineer that did that.
Yeah, but most of the times, they don't even hire the right professionals.
In the first place.
In the first place.
There you go. You talked about the construction workers and the regulator. So it's a whole gamut. And yes, the state has shut down this school. I mean, what else would have happened anyway? But it's important that we mention these names so we know what to do with them. But there are a lot of people that said they had seen this building and it was a no-brainer. They said, seeing this building the way it was going to collapse anyway. So one just wonders, first, you talked about the agencies not being empowered to doing the work the right way, so they dropped the ball in that sense. But what would make the owner of a building see that and allow it to go on? Some would say, is it the rains that caused this? or just someone came and said, it's okay to keep using this building? So what are the things you found out in terms of reality now that is usually responsible for this?
Yeah, so most buildings will give you signs before they collapse, if they're properly designed. The only time you have sudden collapse if there are some dynamic loads like earthquake. Buildings are not designed for earthquake, and they're subjected to earthquake, or some dynamic load like the 9/11 where a plane came and nobody anticipated that. But a properly designed building, will give you signs. You see some cracks on the wall. You see that windows are no longer closing very well. You see that doors are not, and at times you hear some sound. So buildings usually give, signs that they are in distress. But if you don't take any action, then it will progressively lead to a collapse. But if you call the right professionals and they do their study, they can recommend ways you can actually strengthen the building and to stay. But some landlords, they will see these things, but because of greed, and they don't want to spend money on their building, and then because they are not compelled, because most of the times you need a compelling force. Things don't get done except compelled by the force of the law or just by the fear of God. These are two things that can compel people to do the right thing. The force of the law or the fear of God. And so when people are left with only the fear of God and they do not fear God, they allow these things to deteriorate until it leads to collapse. So government regulation is very, very important. Enforcing the regulations, because there are a lot of regulations out there, but we have compromised system. The whole system is compromised. So people see these things and they close their eyes and it leads to such collapse.
Yeah, so I wonder, how wide that, compromise will get to, because as rightly observed, people had seen that building and they knew that it was structurally defective. And there are parents in this mix as well. Imagine having a student in that school and, there are signs of, structural weakness, and yet the students, the parents continue to allow the students to go to that school, to attend that school. So I wonder, if parents are complicit here as well, and is this a poverty factor? Before we continue to dive into the professional lapses.
Yeah, the issue is that it takes a trained eye to spot some of these signs. So the parents might not see them. They might not be very obvious. So it takes a trained eye to spot some of these distresses and all that. So we have recommended several times at institution about the issue of structural surveys, that buildings should be subjected to structural surveys after every 5 years, especially the public school, public buildings. Every 5 years, you should hire structural engineers to go and do structural survey on buildings so they can detect if there are some distresses and recommend remedial measures. So if we adopt, this is the global practice. So if we can adopt some of these measures, some of these buildings, may be saved. And if they need to go, then they have to go before they kill other people.
So let's look at professional lapses now. There surely must be Ministry of Lands, and Survey in every state of the Federation. Maybe not all of them have building control agencies as we do here in Lagos. There are different capacities of responsibilities. Is it as expansive as it should be, with the deployment of professionals to all aspects of building monitoring for quality assurance? Or is it a challenge of inadequate personnel, to cover all the areas required to ensure that there are as minimal collapses of buildings as possible?
Yeah, it's always good to get things right the first time, instead of waiting for people that will go and monitor and find problems. So the starting point is getting the right professionals to handle the procurement process. Because before any building can be designed, there has to be a soil investigation. You have to know the type of soil. Not just the soil on the surface, because you have layers of soil. You might have a good soil on the surface and beneath it's a bad soil. So when you hire a structural engineer, they will engage geotechnical engineers who will do a soil test to know the type of soil. So you know the kind of building that the soil can carry and the kind of foundation that can enable the building to stand. So it's important to get it right the first time. Then when it has distresses, that's when all these people that move around, look for...
That's the level of the, owner of the building or the developer, and that's their responsibility. I'm talking about the state level now for monitoring. What do you find, as a guild, what do you find to be the case in states of the Federation, in ministries particularly that are charged with the responsibility of ensuring quality assurance? What are the challenges that they have?
The challenges are they are understaffed. Because the amount of buildings that are going on, there's just no way their staff can, meet up, going to all the building sites and seeing what is going on. And so I've suggested to the Lagos State government, it's an ongoing discussion, to engage professionals in the markets. Because I have professionals all over the whole place. Every state of the Federation, there are professionals. So I've encouraged them to engage professionals. It's an ongoing discussion. When the last commissioner was there, he moved the hand of the clock a bit. He engaged some professionals to come and design what they call certified appraisers. These are people that will now go to construction sites and make sure they have a technical audit to make sure you have the right professionals there, to make sure that you're using the right materials, to make sure you're sticking to the designs that have been approved. But when he left, I think those professionals were, shoved aside and the civil servants are taking over. Now the advertising and all that, I don't know the kind of response they're getting. So the regulators are understaffed. They need to make use of professionals who are in practice so that they can help them to make sure that things are done properly.
Well, the principal of the school had said that, he inspects the school compound daily and didn't see signs of, it having issues or about to collapse. Even though the governor had said this wouldn't have happened if the people who built the school, I think that talks about the owners and the professionals or whoever is responsible for building that had adhered strictly to the law. So the school has been shut, as I said. Even the federal government has ordered an investigation into this. And I understand they're also trying to see if other schools in the area, in the state, have the same issues. But I'd like us to now speak generally about this. We'll keep our eyes on that investigation and see what comes out of it, particularly who's meant to take responsibility. But I had a conversation with someone last week, and this is for Lagos, and you said that this is now an all-comers affair, and that's why I'm going to this. And the person said, well, the house just next to her, the developers bought the place over and they pulled down the previous structure. And what they do is they just, I don't know how to say, they just put something on the debris and start building on it. And she said that she's even had issues with her own building as a result of that. And this conversation went on and on. I said that she's seen signs of the other building close to her even tilting. And this is in Lagos that she mentioned, and you could see a visibly worried person talking about this. So when you say it's an all-comers affair, how do we ensure that, yes, it's a business that you want people to invest in, but it's also a business that is very regulated? We know it's a very liquid business. A lot of money is pumped into it. So who should be putting their foot down and saying, no, this is what should be happening in this sector?
Yeah, you have the professional bodies, you have regulators of the professional bodies. And then also at the state level, you have building control. It will shock you that there is no register at the Council of Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria for structural engineers. What we have is just civil engineers. Because the way that current registers, they register you based on the department you graduated from. But disciplines like structural engineering, they are specialists in nature. So you become a structural engineer either through training, higher training, or through experience when you work under structural engineers. So there's no register in current where you see this is a register of structural engineers in Nigeria. So that provides a cover for all engineers, all civil engineers, whether you're on highway, whether you're in water. So long as you have a current seal that has civil engineer, you can seal any drawing.
Oh, I see.
So it's been an ongoing problem. We've been, telling current you need to create a register for structural engineers, and you need to adopt the practice that what happens in the UK. Where you have Engineering Council. Engineering Council empowers all other institutions to actually regulate their own aspect of engineering practice. So you need to get that right so that people know that for you to design a building, you need a structural engineer because he's been trained to assess loads and to transfer them safely to the foundation.
Not a civil engineer.
Yeah, there are some civil engineers who also are trained structural engineers. But the problem is that you cannot distinguish who is a trained structural engineer amongst the civil engineers. But if it's structural engineers, they are trained to handle these aspects. So
that's an important question. So
Yeah.
what is the association doing now to ensure that there's a database of structural engineers who are practitioners in the field,
Yeah.
such that the association does not take responsibility
Yeah.
for any major disaster
Yeah.
that happens, and they can identify who it is that has done that, and you probably blacklist them?
Yes. The Institution of Structural Engineers has a database of all structural engineers in Nigeria. Because before you can become registered, you go through a certification. We're the only institution of engineering in Nigeria that has what we call 7-hour open book exam. It's a certifying exam. It does not test just knowledge, it tests your experience. So you can bring any textbook you like. If you don't have the experience, you will fail the exam. And the failure rate is very high. But the pass rate is about between 25 and 30%. So when you go through that exam and you pass, then you can be certified as a structural engineer. But that's where it stops. Our institution does not have any force of the law. The only regulator that has a force of the law is COREN.
That's the council.
Is a council. But council has refused to recognize even the exam and use it as a criteria for registering structural engineers in Nigeria.
Why, might I ask?
They don't have any register for structural engineers. They just register you based on the department from where you graduated. After 5 years, if you can pass their general exam, they register you. So it provides a cover for people who are not really structural engineers, who don't even have experience, but they are civil engineers. They can practice. But they're not the main problem. There are also quacks, people that are not even engineers, who have been building for quite some time. They just have their way, one go their way, get drawings approved, and start constructing. And at the end of the day, we just have collapse.
So what would it require for the Institute of Structural Engineers itself, to acquire that regulatory authority, for you to be able to, do something to prevent the practice of quacks in the profession? Yeah,
we'll have to get, there has to be an act of parliament, and it's a whole lot of course, COREN will fight you. Some other people will fight because already COREN has all the powers. All they need to do is just empower the institutions, and they can do that. So it's a long, route to getting the parliament to, give its own act and give you a force of the law so they can begin to regulate.
This is a very big issue. COREN, by the way, in case you're wondering, is a council for the regulation of engineering in Nigeria. It's an act of law, as you said, that put COREN in place, so it has the backing of the law. Yeah. But if we're going through this challenge now, then something needs to give. Because there are houses right now that beautiful houses, people are living in or about to buy, and you can't tell if it was a structural engineer that approved that plan or just a general engineer or an engineer who is not really versed in structural engineering, as you said, and that is very important. Yeah. So one just wonders the magnitude of this. How many buildings out there were not really certified by the person, the structural engineer, or someone who has the experience, and that is mind-boggling, really, because you can only imagine what will happen to those buildings. So if this is a pervasive issue now, and I'm glad you're talking about this, and this is something that should be resolved as soon as possible, I want you to now walk us through what to look out for, because getting a house is very important. Sometimes you don't have a choice. If you're renting an apartment, you can't begin to ask, was this approved by a structural engineer or just a random engineer? You just want to get an apartment that is cheap, and you something to just protect yourself. So what can I do? And I'm asking for a lot of answers. What can they do as a tenant right now? The problem is staying in the house for 2 years anyway. How can they ensure that they're at least safe to a large extent? That's on the one hand. On the other hand is the conversation I had last week with the person said she had reported to the local government, or at least one of the authorities around, and after maybe once or twice they came, but they said, well, my hands are tied, I can't come again, because it looks like they've been pressured by the developers. And that talks about the power that developers have yet again. So it's a double-edged question for people who seem helpless. What can they do? And then What do you do even when you've done something and it looks like you're not getting the appropriate result?
Yeah, so with the spread of collapse, people should be aware there are structural engineers who are responsible for designing the structural frame of every building. So even if as a tenant you want to hire a property, ask for the drawings. Can I see your structural drawings?
Engineer, let's step
Can
up
I see? Yeah, can I see? Yeah, it's important.
You can ask.
Yeah, you can ask.
And you should get.
Because some buildings don't even have approved plans. Some don't have approved plans. And then also ask, do you have soil tests? Or you can,
for a tenant.
Or you can consult a structural engineer. Please, I want to rent this apartment. Can you just, go there and have like an audit?
You pay more.
So you pay more for a lawyer to help you ask all of these questions, and you pay more for an engineer to help you ask this question.
How much cost can you attach to life? Because that's the problem. Most people don't pay attention to pre-construction activities before a building is constructed. There are a lot of activities that go on before you see people constructing. And that's why they say, oh, engineers wear suits and stay in the office. In that office, they assess the load. In that office, they look at the soil. They even model the soil, how it's supposed to be, put the load, all the load that's required, and design the structures before you can see people building on site. And while people are building on site, they are supposed to be going there and make sure that what they have designed is what is being constructed. So if you don't follow any of this process, there might be a problem.
So let's look at this stat that your association provided on the number of building collapses, and it's quite telling if you consider the list. Lagos, of course, shares the highest burden with 348 building collapse cases since 1974. Anambra follows there curiously with 26. Abuja has 26 as well. I wonder the variation in that mix. Oyo comes next with 21, and Kano has 19. Of course, for Lagos, it's a no-brainer because of the congestion and the thousands of structures that are ongoing every other day. And you have talked about the limited personnel available for monitoring of these construction sites. But just talk to us in terms of topography, what seems to be responsible for the high cases that we have also in states like Anambra, Oyo, and of course the FCT as well. Okay,
if you look at the centers that have the high incidence of building collapse, they are city centers. So there's a lot of construction going on in that place. About 10% of Nigerians live in Lagos, so that's why you have that kind of scale. But when you look at Anambra states, Onitsha and all that, they are highly populated cities. And the kind of construction that is going on there is not really properly regulated. People don't respect professionalism. That is the issue. They just believe that people have been building over the ages, so they'll prefer somebody who has done it before to come and build for them without doing the mathematics and the physics that's involved. So if you look at those areas with high incidence of building collapse, they are city centers where there's a lot of construction going on. So the same thing that's happening in Lagos, but on a smaller scale. So that's why also the incidence in those areas are slightly lower than that of Lagos.
The other part of my question, and it's good you're giving context, is about whistleblowing.
Yeah.
First, there's this concern for, safety, security. A lot of people don't want to whistleblow because they're not sure that if I go to report, I would not be targeted. But I think a lot of people are beginning to, get off that because this is life we're talking about. Yeah. You have to actually do something. But a lot of people whistleblow, they report, and they don't get the appropriate response that they want to get. And as you said, a lot of people now personally hire engineers and say, well, I'll take this upon myself. And sometimes they even give results and they still don't get anything. So when you whistleblow and that whistle is not loud as it ought to, is not getting the right response, what do you do? What does for example, the building collapse organization, is that something you can take on board as well? Because that's a major one. And what happens when we have the rains? Does that also affect the integrity, the structural integrity of buildings? Yeah,
the issue of whistleblowing, like the Building Collapse Prevention Guild, is an advocacy group. What we can do is just blow the whistle.
As well?
Yeah, the cock can only crow, but you can never, force a lazy man out of his bed. So we blow the whistle and we also sit on the government and just keep talking about it until they do something. And some of these regulators, they're also part of Building Collapse Prevention Guild. So have a platform. And so when people blow the whistle, they also see it and they respond. But like I said, they're overwhelmed with the sheer number of things going on in the states, in Lagos State. Yeah. So some other states like Ogun State, they are collaborating with the Building Collapse Prevention Guild, and that's why you can see that you don't have so much collapse.
And is Lagos collaborating as well?
Lagos has been dragging their feet for years, so we don't know what is going on.
The rain spots. I was asking, what do the rains do to a building? Do they reduce the integrity? Because that's been a concern. People are wondering, when the rains come, does that affect my building? Yeah.
The rain spot has to do with the soil, the type of soil. There are some soils that become unstable when there is water. For example, clay will expand. Laterite will liquefy. All right, so that's why when you see waterlogged areas, when they're trying to sand fill before constructing, they make use of sharp sand, which remains stable, whether in the presence of water, the water remains stable. And if you do a proper soil investigation, even in your design, you take into consideration that those soils have been saturated. But if you don't know the physics and the mathematics of it, and you just go ahead and build, and the clay expands, it can affect your foundation. Or the laterite liquefies, it can affect the foundation. So the issue is doing the proper thing. Get the right professionals to handle your building process. And what you pay to professionals, even all professionals, might not be more than 10% of the cost of building. But Nigerians want to invest so much money in the construction, but when it comes to the preparation, they believe that it's just paper you're producing and they want to pay peanuts, or they rush through the whole process and go into the main construction. So that's a big problem.
And it's an important question because, what comes through my mind is the floods of 2 years ago, 2022, where we saw practically houses in Kogi State submerged, and in some other states of the Federation as well, where there were serious flooding challenges, Delta State, Bayelsa State, even Anambra, that is also on your list. And it tickles the imagination really to wonder what is contained in your functions as a guild if you have cardinal objectives of, advising states of the Federation as a result of the impact of adverse weather conditions, that those structures may come in structurally defective in the long term rather than the short term.
Yeah, one thing is that the attitude of civil servants towards professionals in the market is even terrible. They see you as people that want to poke your nose into matters that don't concern you. They see you as competing with them. So even to cooperate with the guild is a problem. Of all the states in the Federation, it's only Ogun State that is cooperating with the guild. And that's because their current commissioner, is a founding member of the guild. So he knows the importance of some of the things we're talking about. So he made sure he facilitated it, talked to the governor, and the governor bought into it. And right now they're collaborating with us. So the attitude of the civil servants is also a problem. So all we can do is to flag and to insist. But they are the ones that have the force of the law to make sure that things are done
properly. What about engagements with leaders of the ministry, i.e. the appointed commissioners or the permanent secretaries of those ministries?
I have had several. When I was the president of the Building Collapse Prevention Guild, who had several meetings with the commissioner, who had several meetings. When Fashola was there, it was better. But since Fashola left and the civil servants are the ones in charge, it has been a problem.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
This user on X, John K. Architect, says most of these buildings are not handled by registered building professionals like architects and structural engineers. Says the government planning authority is highly compromised, allowing the developers with other intentions to have their way. So this is one of the users, and it just re-echoes the point you made. So quickly as we wind down, let's run through those signs to watch out for yet again. What should alarm you and get you to take action?
Okay, when you see cracks on your buildings, that's a sign.
There's
and there are different types of cracks.
Exactly.
When you see a horizontal crack it means there is a foundation issue. The building is settling.
That's a
straight line.
Okay.
That goes this way?
This way.
Okay.
When you also see an inclined crack, it means there's some form of settlement going on.
What does settlement mean?
It means that the building is having issues, the foundation is giving way.
Okay.
All right? Yeah. So when you see a straight crack, it might just be, some construction errors and all that. But the one that should alarm you is a horizontal crack and an inclined crack. And there are also some subtle signs. For example, if your doors are no longer closing very well, which means it's no longer square, it's settling, and doors can no longer, so when you're opening it, you find some problems. The same thing with your windows. And at times you can hear some funny sound, all right? Maybe the roof is under stress and the nails and the wood are making noise, all right? Second, and lastly, if you drop a tennis ball on the floor and it begins to roll towards a corner, it's an idea that maybe the building is beginning to tilt. So these are some of the signs that, And then on the outside, at times you have fissures.
Around the house?
Around the house. That's a serious foundation.
Fissures
what
are
do
like
fissures
cracks
look
on
like?
the floor.
That's fissures means that you have a ground, cracks on the ground.
On the ground.
Yes.
Okay. Now, very quickly, it would be remiss of us to talk about the challenges of monitoring without also talking about what the law says, where ample notification has been given and the state government wants to move in to evacuate people and demolish, and the people will refuse to evacuate. So is there anything that the law says that compels people to leave a structurally defective building?
If a building is structurally defective, the government can seal the place and evacuate people. But, in this climb, we'll have governance without compassion. People's houses have been demolished and there's no alternative. You can provide an alternative.
There should be an alternative.
A temporary alternative. Right. Move them there, because governance is about people. But here we'll have government without soul, without compassion, and it's terrible. So that's why that's what forces people into disobedience. They just stay there because they don't have money to relocate themselves.
Right. But ultimately, your safety is important.
It's important, yeah.
Very, very important to reiterate that. But we'd like to thank you so much for providing insight into this. I see some more questions coming in, but we have to run right now. We're speaking with Engineer Eddie Atomoyogo, past president, Nigerian Institute of Structural Engineers, past president, Building Collapse Prevention Guild. Thank you once again.
Thank you for having me.
Well, if there's anything you take from this, ensure that the right people handle those constructions. It is just a no-brainer. We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll turn our attention to electricity, power generation. Is it about to get better? Stay with us.
Welcome back. So we now turn our attention to electricity generation, and you know that that's a thorny issue as far as Nigeria is concerned. But Lagos always seems to take the lead, and we recall that under the administration of former governor, now president, there was an attempt at public-private partnership with the AES project. So with the Lagos State Electricity Generation Bill of 2024 that is set to guarantee the provision of affordable power to Lagosians within 2 years, how is that going to happen? Joining us to have that conversation is the Commissioner for Energy in Lagos, Mr. Abiodun Ogunleye. Good morning and welcome to the program, Mr. Ogunleye. It's good to have you.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing?
Very well, and we hope you're doing good as well. So let's dive into it straight away. We understand that it's a 21-part provision bill. Help us understand the key provisions in that bill and how it is going to, revolutionize power generation in Lagos State in 2 years.
Okay. Well, the first step is that Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu set out in his second tenure with the Teams Plus agenda. And at the center of Teams Plus agenda is making the city a 21st century city that all of us will be proud of. And that immediately implies that we have to eliminate the culture of blackout that is predominant in the city. And the starting point for this game-changing opportunity is the constitution that enables, the changes effected in the constitutions that enable states to be able to legislate, regulate their respective power markets. And the immediate implication of that is that the federal law followed immediately. I mean, that was one of the very first things that Mr. President effected as soon as he became president. And immediately he signed off that, the door was open for people like states like us, Lagos State, to effect our own electricity bill. And our electricity bill is currently with our State House of Assembly, and we had the public hearing. We're moving on to have all the issues reviewed and finalized. Once the government signs it off, we have the framework and a well-documented platform for us to ensure that we say farewell to the culture of blackout. Now, the constitutional amendment is an opportunity, but Lagos State government has now taken advantage of that opportunity to ensure that we're able to get into the details of the challenges we have in the environment. And that will dovetail into us being able to do low cost, value for money provisioning in the Lagos area. We're also going to be able to ensure that we create value with partners, with new partners, and partnership that will ensure that the whole city is well powered. And we're also able to ascertain what is happening virtually all over the grid,
right?
Because the grid will get smarter, and real-time monitoring and control of the power infrastructure can also be managed. And of course, there will be penalties for market participants for good. There will be penalties for good behavior, and there are penalties for bad behaviors, and incentives for good behavior.
All right, Mr.
And so to make this happen.
Pardon me. You can land on that point, but there are a couple of things we need to quickly walk through, because this sounds very good for Lagosians. So let me just break it down. The average Lagosian, depending on where you are, gets varying, hours of electricity supply daily. Some get maybe 10 hours or less or more, again, depending on your band. So first question, obviously, is will this guarantee 24-hour electricity supply? That's one. You can answer yes or no, then I can put in the next one.
Will this guarantee 24 hours supply?
Yeah.
Over time, it will, because the banding culture will have been substantially modified.
So what is the time frame you're looking at to that? What is the overtime time frame?
Now, the law provides for a cycle of 2 years. So in the first 2 years, we are going to be working very hard to try and make this happen.
All right. So speak to us. What then happens to the current arrangement? Because I know a lot of people are scratching their heads. I'm already on Ikeja Electric, or I'm on Eco. So does that mean, would it be subsumed? Would they still have their own, operations? And then this will be like a mobile telecommunication service provider where you can just choose, I want Lagos. How will it be operationalized?
No. Well, Mr. Governor Sanwo-Olu's objective is this: electricity is for all. All right? So, and electricity is a physical business. So it cannot be quickly restructured and like the mobile infrastructure. But we are recreating the way the business is done, where more parties are coming in, more investors are coming in. The private sector is being encouraged to come in and play in all segments where we have gaps. What he has done is to first and foremost say, hey, gentlemen, let's de-risk this market. Why will money not flow here? And based on that, we have been able to come up with a new market design, which is enshrined in the law that ensures that market cash flow is preserved. And based on the preservation of the market cash flow, investors can see where they will get their returns from, and it will just make for, it's practically democratizing the space and ensuring that participants are able to meet the needs of the people. They can put the right capital required into what is required on a localized network. So we're going to be having a mixture of both federal support, our own support, and then the private sector people, all of us coming together to say farewell to the culture of blackout in the city.
So essentially what you're saying is once you create that energy market in Lagos, Lagosians, some connected to the national grid currently, maybe Ikeja Electric, can decide to say, oh, I'm ending my service with Ikeja Electric and I'm joining the Lagos market, a service provider within the Lagos market. Is that what's going to happen?
No. Okay. Ikeja Electric, Eco Disco are going to be part of the Lagos electricity market as active market participants. They will continue their business, but segments of the business that are not doing as well, that they are not able to service in an efficient manner, we have arrangements in place to ensure that we transition to more efficient servicing of those segments. What we are saying is that, one, the new market condition provide for additional players. Instead of having a big disco, we're going to have smaller retailers, smaller resellers that are able to deal and contract across the board. Ikeja and Eco Disco will continue to operate the network, and if we have additional network opportunities between the market regulator and all the market participants, they will agree on where and how to deal with those opportunities. But definitely, what you see today that look like, and I call it market monopoly or something, will be broken down substantially.
Okay, so we understand that Lagos is also set to build 5 new power hubs across the state. Is this part of the provision of the Lagos State Electricity Bill 2024? And if that is it, what in the component of the over 2 trillion naira budget of Lagos for the year is devoted to this? And do you already have partners identified, who are going to work with Lagos State government for the provision, for the construction of these hubs? Help us understand what it will look like.
Okay. The hubs is one of the partnership that is coming in to help us strengthen the outcomes in the market. For the market to be successful and truly independent, we need to have additional generation capacity. In addition to additional generation capacity, some of the deficiencies that we have in the market today include the lack of supporting infrastructure for the industry. A lot of components and maintenance are still being domiciled in foreign currency. So the market or the energy hubs are flowing out of the federal government initiative to build new lines from Geregu into Lagos. It's a TCN project. So we are not going to make the mistake of allowing those vast acquisition of land to just lie fallow. So what we are doing is that we are taking charge of the spaces annexed to those infrastructure, and we are putting up what is required to ensure that those substations always have supply. So those supply can service a 132 kV network in a very appropriate manner.
All right, so let's step back a bit. Will this be just distribution alone, or it's a whole gamut from generation to transmission and distribution, just to be clear?
It's the whole value chain.
Oh, fantastic.
It's the whole value chain.
So you'll be involved?
Starting from engaging with the federal wholesale market, federal institutions in a most appropriate way to ensure that the best value, the low cost, and as low as cost efficient we can be. And then we move on to generation. The TCN needs to do a couple of things to be able to be actively engaged as a market participant. Then we also need to ensure that across the value chain, we are not unaware of the gaps in distribution and the challenges we have delivering the last mile, which is metering. So the law actually provided that it is illegal for anyone to supply you electricity on an estimated bill. So on a step-by-step, on a household-by-household, feeder-by-feeder basis, market participants and resellers and sellers will have to ensure compliance with these rules.
Well, it's one thing for the law to say that. Is another thing in the reality, and you know that the reality is way different. Even getting meters to the customers, transformers, and the rest, the customers bear the burden. So I wonder if you're saying that Lagos will build a generation plant, or at least would open up the doors for investors who want to build generation plants, or you're going to leverage on other generation plants and maybe get power from them. That's on the one hand. When you talk about the pricing now, so does that mean it will be cheaper than what we already have? Yes, it was 225 at first, and it was cut to 206 naira per kilowatt hour. So would Lagos offer something cheaper, maybe 150?
Okay, you want to speak to tariff planning and the whole government, and I can assure you of something. Governor Sanwo-Olu's key objective in this is that electricity must be affordable and available to all the citizens of Lagos. Very simply stated. Now, what are the implications of that? We have to source for low-cost generation option. Now, remember that most the fossil fuel options that we have today is largely driven by foreign currency denominated gas. So we are trying as much as possible to see how we can engage more than 2 gigawatts of renewables. And you know, operating cost-wise, renewables are a lot cheaper. Over and above that, the retailers will also be allowed the incentive or the opportunity to look at local feedstocks that they can use to enable availability within their grid, within their network. So that will make it that will make it cheaper in the long run. A lot of incentives will come in. We also have a lot of industries and operations that have facilities that are locked down overnight and all that. So they will have the opportunity to also sell to the grid, because we are coming up with a net metering policy that allows them to work with their local grid service provider and ensure that where they have excess supply, no matter how they generate it, once it passes through the appropriate mechanism, they will be able to offload to the network. Currently, a lot of those capacities are locked down. And you should also remember that even on the fossil side, currently the pipelines servicing a lot of our power plants have a lot of restrictions. The law will also ensure that assets dedicated to the provision of electricity have open access, and that is so fundamental to ensuring that it's a free market environment that we are creating.
So knowing that transmission really is the bulk of the challenge, taking off what has been generated and feeding it off to distribution. Following up on Kade's question, is Lagos now prioritizing building, expanding infrastructure in the transmission space, or Lagos is building infrastructure to support generation?
The federal transmission network will continue to be the 330 based on what is coming up. We will be running the 13233. So the immediate implication of that is that whatever gaps that there may be in the 132, we will have to take care of it. And we're not just going to take care of those gaps, we're also going to ensure that they are sustainable. And then we're going to be working with TCN to find, to resolve some of these challenges. As I said to you, TCN is doing some work in the Lagos area, and we are reinforcing a lot of the work they are doing, and it can only get better. Now, you may not be right that you see, TCN is available 90% of the time, despite the various challenges we have with the grid going off, but TCN is available 90% of the time. So that means that there's a need for some other actions along the value chain beyond TCN. So it's not just about TCN. Now, to also ensure that we are not just talking about TCN and all that, remember what I said to you earlier, we are going to ensure that we have competition, we have smaller players, we are able to inject renewables within the network, and then the market will encourage participants to service the customers in a way that is most efficient and will make their own business most profitable. So we are going to end up with a scenario where our people will get value for money, and the excuses will not be pushed up and down. You will not be saying it's one TCN that is in Abuja that is not able to service you. You will actually be in a position to know who your local service provider is, and you can challenge some of the assumptions they are putting on the table.
Indeed, the democratization of the entire value chain pretty much sounds exciting. And although we're hoping that you commit to how affordable this would be in the long term, but it's an ongoing conversation, and we look forward to another opportunity to having you, to provide even more insight into this. You have our best wishes in this new Lagos State Electricity Generation Bill and the reality of it in 2 years, according to what your government says. Mr. Abiodun Ogunleye, Commissioner for Energy and Mineral Resources in Lagos State, thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Bugola.
And so we turn our attention this time around to outside our shores, the U.S. specifically, to look at the implications of that event on Sunday the attempted assassination of the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. That will be after the break. Join us again.
Well, a lot of people saw those images from the United States on Saturday and thought, wait a minute, are we in the 60s or the 50s or the dark ages of politics where we saw assassinations, successful assassinations? Well, thankfully, this didn't happen as some said was planned, but there's a whole lot around that event. The former president, Donald Trump, is said to be safe. The current president, Joe Biden, has been briefed on this, and he said, well, America cannot tolerate such events. But this points to deeper issues. And this morning, we have joining us Professor Femi Otubanja, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, Lagos. And he's right here with us in our Lagos studio. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I don't know if you saw this coming. We saw what happened in Mexico in the build-up to elections, how several people were killed. And people thought it would end with the border, the Mexico border, and not spill into the U.S. But we've seen an attempt now on former President Donald Trump. I'll go straight to the theories. Some say maybe this was staged. Some other people say that's unthinkable. Why would you stage such? But I want to get your first impression on this.
Well, my first impression is that Trump is the architect of his own fortune, misfortune this time. The 2016 election was one of the most negative, divisive, and troubling elections in American history, down to the language, inflammatory, inciting language of Donald Trump. Donald Trump introduced profanities into U.S. politics, abusing people, crooked Hillary. Even his own Republican rivals gave them names, accused Tom Cruise, father of assassinating President Kennedy, abused Mario Rubio's wife, called Christie fat. I mean, the kind of thing that you are amazed about, what we did not expect from politicians in the U.S. Because he came into politics without any background in governance and in politics and governance. So he did not have the etiquette and protocol of politics. So he tended to incite. In the 2020 elections, during the presidential debate, Trump called on a group of thugs called the Proud Boys to stand by, to stand down and stand by. And of course, on January 6th, incited the crowd to go and fight for their country. And it's amazing that even on the day that, the Saturday that there was an attempted assassination against him, the first word that came out of his mouth was fight. It turned American politics into a fight, into a war. It's, you know, the opponents, Democrats, as enemies. That's the way he has projected his rivals in America. And that has consequences. This man continues to incite others in a subtle manner or directly, his supporters. You know, when they were going to, he was having this case in New York, he was telling people that Americans will not accept his incarceration. I mean, it's subtle incitement of people to come and riot and fight. So he brought this, it's not as if he brought the culture of violence into American politics. America is a gun-toting society. There are more guns than the population, 120 guns per 100 people. That is statistics for America. America has had a tradition of assassinations. 4 presidents, several politically exposed people have been killed. When you have a 20-year-old boy who has access to automatic weapons, what do you expect?
But some say,
yes.
Pardon me, Prof, some say that maybe now he's justified for having that stance of fight because he thinks or he knows the opponents or people that can come for him. So in this event, some have said, maybe it's now a justification. So he knows that there's been always a threat to his life. So he's been on the offensive.
Yes, there's a threat to the life of every politician. There's a threat. Once you are on a campaign trail, even in Nigeria, even in the most sophisticated countries, always it's a security problem to manage leaders when you are campaigning because they're exposed. Nowhere in the world is a leader safe. Even in your bedroom, somebody can put a bomb. So it's not about fight. That's the language, the first language that came out of Islam is fight. The politics is not a fight. And if you contrast what went on in Britain only a week ago, incredibly seamless, you know, sophisticated. The third day, the Prime Minister was already at work. There's the problem that we see that Trump has created for America. He has debased American politics. You know, we used to look up to America, but no, not anymore. America is not a model for us. If you need models of democracy, you go to Europe. The people like Trump don't survive in Europe. Le Pen, only last week or so, there was an election, parliamentary election in France. There was this prediction that the nationalists were going to take over, but they came third. I know in Britain, there's a man called Nigel Farage, who is a right-wing politician. He's always been at the periphery. Right-wingers are at the periphery, except in Holland, where you have the right wing having the majority of members of parliament. So characters like Trump do not survive in Europe because the politics is more sophisticated. But because of the systemic racism in America, you have a person like that who thrives on that racism.
But Prof,
yes.
You know, the commentary in America is also to the extent that the Democrats themselves are not innocent of negative rhetoric. Some of them have been quoted as saying that if Trump won the election, it would be the end of democracy in America. And even, you know, Democratic representatives themselves are saying that the U.S. media has not been impartial amid all of this, even before now, to the first part of Trump's presidency. So to what extent have these elements contributed to the divisions in America and what we saw over the weekend?
No, when the Democrats talk about end of democracy, they're talking of Trump. Trump's autocratic...
Are they afraid that he's going to win the election?
Yes, of course. Of course, he's running neck and neck with Biden. And with Biden's poor performance and indication that he might not be totally center, and might totally up there mentally, there's every danger that the likelihood that if he doesn't step down, Trump may win the elections. Because if they have another series of debates and he ends up the way he did last time, then the situation will be irredeemable. And Trump has made all kinds of statements during this campaign tour that indicates that he wants to be an autocrat. That is his predilection. He loves autocratic regimes. You know, he comes from an autocratic background. He was a businessman. He owned his own business. He's never been under anybody in his life. His father was a millionaire. He does not have the understanding of the poor, nor empathy for the poor. So you have a man who has never been under anybody's control, suddenly becoming president. So he doesn't know what we call checks and balances. They do not exist for him because he's the one who always has the last word. And he thinks that when he comes back, he's going to deal with his opponent, he's going to transform institutions that have been there for centuries, that are supposed to be impartial, are going to transform them into partisan political instruments and go after his enemies and so on. So that's the fear that the Democrats have, that if this man comes, he's going to overturn things and establish an autocracy.
But the Democrats have a choice of presenting another candidate, considering the cognitive worries of President Biden.
Well, that's their business. I think they have. The convention can be contested. It's not the end of the matter. If they can persuade the man to step down, then maybe they might be able to challenge him. But if they challenge him, I don't think it will go through. It will only undermine the party itself, its cohesion and its ability to win elections. Once you have a contest at that level.
And if they do not, this will further fuel divisions.
Yeah.
You know,
really, I think they're in a very bad shape right now with the state of Biden's mental capacity.
Very tough place. But, you know, it's politics and politicians, they always believe the impossible. They act like they're not from here. But I want you to speak to this. Two sides. A lot of people shudder what would have happened if this attempt actually was successful. An attempt on Trump's life, if the assassination really went through. I wonder if you thought about that for a moment. What would have happened to America as we know it now?
Well, I imagine that initially there will be a spontaneous reaction of violence by its supporters. But, you know, America is a very efficient security system. They will contain it. And presidents have been killed in America before. John F. Kennedy was the last one to be killed in 1963. The American did not collapse. The system will go on. You know, nothing really.
But the circumstances are a bit different. As you said, the ratio of guns skyrocketed, not as we had in the 60s, definitely. So each person, as you said, has access to dozens of guns. So that's going to be a game changer. Some of them even as trained or even better trained than security operatives. A young man, 20-year-old, just went on top of a roof and he aimed and almost got the target. So just imagine what they are dealing with right now.
And there are many militia groups, you know, extremist groups that are very well armed. There will be some violence. Nobody should think that nothing will happen, but I'm saying that the system has a way of containing and managing it. Given a day or two, things will calm down. You know, it's not going to be the end of America, but then we thank God that it did not happen.
You know, there's been a lot of talk about what could possibly have been the motive of the guy, although the FBI is still investigating. But I don't know if anything went through your mind, you know, if this guy had motive, what could it have been? Is President Trump that much of a threat to those who would rather not have him become America's president again? Or is this just another mentally disturbed young American? Of course, we've seen younger Americans carry guns, weapons.
Now, from the preliminary information we have, I was just watching the video this morning about one of the classmates who said the boy was a loner, that he was constantly bullied in school. And this must be his own reaction of wanting to be noticed, to be important. That's at the level of personal explanation. We don't know whether there's more intricate conspiracy. But interestingly, the boy is a registered Republican, so he's not even a Democrat, according to preliminary FBI information. So this may be just a personal psychological problem that pushed him to do what he wanted to do, but also because he had been shot dead, we won't know whether there was a more intricate conspiracy.
So I asked what may have happened if this was successful. Now I'm going to move to what do you expect will happen as a result of this? It could swing either way. Some people say this has just put Trump's chances, you know, off the roof, just shot it off the roof. Some say, well, not exactly. This may swing both ways. So you have seen elections, the predictions, events happen, and then how it changes the outcome of elections. How do you think this significantly changes the...
Initially, there will be a swing, sympathy for what happened to him, because there will be a swing because he is in the front burner. He's always in the news. And this has also put him as the #1 news item. So once you are constantly exposed like that, you get the benefit. But that does not mean that between now and the elections, other things will not happen that will eradicate or undermine that benefit. So I cannot say that this will project him to the presidency. It will project him a little bit more in the next few days, but then, this opinion polls, they swing, they go up and down. So very unlikely that this will be decisive.
But Prof, look at this image.
Yes.
His fist clenched, so we're fighting for something. Yeah. There's blood on his face.
Yes.
I mean, this does a lot to the psyche of the voters generally.
Yes, but don't forget that it's about his supporters. There are a lot of independents in America. The interesting about Trump, which, to be fair to him, is that at the last election, 2020, he had over 74 million votes.
That's in the can already. So.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it's in the can. The election results don't determine the intensity of your support. Those who actually are fanatical supporters may not be, maybe they be about 30 million, which is still very significant to have 30 million people on your, at your back all the time, who are contributing money, supporting you, mobilizing for you, and so on. And he's dealing with the affluent section of society, people who are comfortable. More than the Democrats. So I think that he will get some advantage from this, but I don't know how significant that is. Maybe all it does is to solidify the support of his supporters. Whether it will persuade independents to move to his side is a different matter.
Well, I'm going to get back to the motive of the young man, the yes. Thomas Cook guy, but let's stay with whether this would deify Trump or not, yes. this event, but some would disagree with you, Prof. Yeah. They would quote the achievement of President Trump, during his first term, yes. His immigration policy, the building of the wall, the return of industries to America, the increase in jobs during his presidency, mm-hmm. And to that extent, some would say that you may disagree with President Trump, but some of the things that he said he would do as a president, he actually did them. Yes. And perhaps this would further shut his chance up. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not so sure that I agree with you too, that he did everything he wanted to do. Many things. He didn't have, for example, one of the most significant things is health policy. He never really was able to bring out anything as a counterweight to Obama's healthcare, which subsists up to today. And of course, I think that Biden has been a great president for America, a very great president in terms of job creation, addressing basic problems, infrastructural problems and so on. Trump did not complete building the wall. His rhetoric about immigration was inciting. He has this incited Islamophobia, and so on. He's a divisive figure. I'm not his fan, but that's no reason why. But I will not support his being assassinated. Unfortunately, I think that our African women, when they want to deal with the child, they pull the air. I think this gun that has scarred his ear may be pulling his hair to change his ways. He needs to change his rhetoric. He needs to stop inciting. He has not even accepted the 2020 election results. If you don't accept the election results, you are inciting your supporters to reject the system.
Prof, yes. We have a case here in Nigeria where people have not accepted elections.
They are not behaving as Democrats. There's no reason why you should not accept the result after you have exhausted all this.
No, but for some of them, particularly the opposition parties, supporters, they say that this president is not their president. And they say that they saw that election and they had a lot of issues with that election.
You went to court. You see, if you are...
They don't trust
If you are a president, that's the problem. So that means you have to have your own court. If you are a presidential candidate in a country, and you don't trust you went through all the processes of litigation, and you are told that you lost, and you are not accepting.
But what if
you are not accepting INEC, you are not accepting the judiciary. Who are you going to accept? That means that the judgment should be in your own bedroom.
But what if, Prof, what if you were able to provide evidence of election malpractice, and regardless of the provision of election malpractice, you still were unable to secure justice in the court? You may not necessarily accept the verdict of the court.
What is justice?
You may accept the verdict of the court, but you may not accept the outcome of the elections.
No, justice for them is that their own view must be accepted. Is that what justice is all about? And you have to ask, why do you go to court if you are already convinced that you are the one that is right? But you go to court, the court tells you are not right, then that's, and you are not accepting it. It is inelegant. It is not appropriate not to congratulate your opponent after you have exhausted.
It's very interesting. This is about American politics.
Yes.
Somehow we
but it has I was the one who said, if you don't accept the results, then you are inciting.
And it's a global issue.
Yeah.
It's another climate. So as we wind down, Prof, some people have, and I think this is sarcasm as well, they said that, Nigeria should condemn what happened in America. The same way, if anything happens in Nigeria, they will release it and say, we condemn in strongest terms this. So they're saying that, and I think what they're trying to say is that the American democracy politics that we always thought be like America, it's not actually perfect. And I know that they agree they're not perfect, but maybe it's not even the standard to follow in the first place. So do you think this changes a lot of dynamics? People will now begin to say, oh, wait a minute, American politics is not something to model after. Let's look inwards and develop something for ourselves and fix ourselves by ourselves.
Yes, I'm not sure that we should throw out the baby with the bathwater. Trump has brought some debasement to American politics, but that does not mean American politics. There are two separate things. Trump's own approach of aggression, of divisiveness, of incitement, these are not the characters of American politics. That's why the system was able to contain him. He lost the election in 2020 because his style was not acceptable to the majority. The 2020 election had the highest turnout in American history. As a response to an attempt to get rid of him, Biden scored 81 million votes to his 74. So American politics is still the politics of pressure groups, of liberalism, of openness,
so it's still an example to follow.
It's an example to follow, but not Trump's.
Not 100%.
Yes.
There you go. We'll have to thank you so much. I know investigation is still on. People are asking, did the security agencies respond promptly enough? Particularly, there were videos showing the man on the roof getting the position right and all of that. But we'll see how this plays out. I would like to thank you so much, Professor Femi Otubanjo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, Lagos. Always great to speak with you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Well, there you have it. Bukola.
Yes, indeed, Kade. So we've had all the inspiration that we can get. So let's choose the elegance of peace and non-violence as we practice our politics and every other thing that we do. Join us again tomorrow for another edition. I am Bukola Koka.
We're not done just yet with our morning package. Sunrise Daily is next. You don't want to miss that. I'm Kayode Kikiolu. Have a great day.